You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Numbers 20, Moses Strikes the Rock. Numbers 20 records several significant and emotional moments during Israel's wilderness journey. In a single chapter, we see grief, frustration, disobedience, and transition. Miriam dies, the people complain about water again, Moses disobeys the Lord in anger, and Aaron's life comes to an end. And yet woven through these events is a powerful reminder of God's continued provision and a clear picture that ultimately points us to Jesus. Now, the chapter begins with a moment of loss. Verse 1 tells us, "And the people of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there." Miriam had been part of Israel's story since the days of the Exodus. She watched over Moses as a baby floating in the Nile and later helped lead the people in worship after the Red Sea crossing. Her death marks the passing of an entire generation that had experienced the earliest moments of Israel's deliverance from Egypt. As the chapter unfolds, it becomes clear that leadership transition is underway. Soon after Miriam's death, the people find themselves facing another familiar wilderness challenge. They run out of water. Verses 2 and 3 describe the situation like this. "Now there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people quarreled with Moses and said, 'Would that we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord.'" This complaint probably sounds familiar. Earlier in their journey, the Israelites had faced the same issue, and they responded with similar frustration. Well, once again, they accuse Moses of leading them into hardship. And once again, they forget God's previous faithfulness. Moses and Aaron respond by doing the right thing at first. They bring the situation before the Lord. Verse 6 says, "Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them." God gives Moses clear instructions. He's told to take his staff, gather the people, and speak to a rock so that water will come out and provide for the congregation. Verse 8 records the command, "Tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water." But when Moses addresses the people, something changes. Frustration and anger seem to take over. And instead of calmly obeying the Lord's instructions, Moses rebukes the people harshly and strikes the rock with his staff. Verses 10 and 11 say this, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock?" And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and water came out abundantly. God still provides the water. The people and their livestock are supplied with what they need, but Moses' actions carry consequences. And the Lord explains the issue in verse 12. "Because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them." This moment becomes one of the most painful turning points in Moses' life. After leading the people for decades, he won't be the one to bring them into the promised land. Why was this moment so serious? Well, Moses didn't simply make a minor mistake. God had instructed him specifically to speak to the rock, but he struck it instead. And in doing so, Moses misrepresented God before the people. His angry words also suggested that he and Aaron were the ones providing the water rather than the Lord. Now, the place where this occurred became known as Meribah, which means quarreling, because the people quarreled with the Lord there. But there's another layer to this story that becomes clear when we look at the broader message of Scripture. And I want you to follow along with me here because this is significant. This is something I've found interesting for many years. Earlier in Israel's journey, back in Exodus 17, God had instructed Moses to strike a rock so that water would flow. Now, that earlier moment becomes an important picture that the New Testament helps us understand. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4, the Apostle Paul explains that the rock in the wilderness symbolically pointed to Christ. He says it this way, "For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ." In Exodus, the rock was struck and water flowed out. In Numbers 20, Moses was told to speak to the rock, not to strike it again. The symbolism is powerful, and it's amazing to ponder when its full significance becomes clear to us, because Jesus, the true rock, would be struck once through his crucifixion. Through his sacrifice, life-giving water flows to those who believe in him, and his death doesn't need to be repeated. So when Moses struck the rock again, he disrupted the picture that God was creating here. Instead of following God's instruction and speaking to the rock, he acted out of frustration. And even though water still flowed, Moses failed to represent the Lord's holiness and the Lord's plan accurately. Jesus later used the imagery of water to describe the life he provides. In John 7:37 and 38, he said, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." The people in Numbers 20 were physically thirsty, and God provided water from a rock. Well, humanity is spiritually thirsty, and Jesus provides living water that satisfies the deepest needs of our souls. Now, the rest of this chapter continues to highlight transition. Israel asked the king of Edom for permission to pass through his land, but their request was denied, so their journey would be longer than expected. And then another significant loss occurs. Aaron's death is announced. Verse 24 says, "Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land that I have given to the people of Israel." Aaron's priestly garments are transferred to his son Eleazar, symbolizing the passing of leadership to the next generation. This chapter reminds us that human leaders are imperfect and temporary. Even faithful servants like Moses and Aaron had limitations and failures. But Jesus is different. He's the perfect leader, the perfect mediator, and the true source of living water. Where Moses fell short, Jesus succeeds. Where earthly leaders pass away, Jesus lives forever. Numbers 20 shows us our need for a greater leader and a better source of life, and that leader is Christ, the rock who provides living water to all who come to him in faith. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.